All right, everybody. Today we're going to be showing the Varigate 8 Plus and the voltage block, and at the end we'll be giving away a voltage block. Just going to jump into it. We're going to start with the Varigate 8 Plus. I'm going to go over a few of the basics and then kind of touch on some more advanced features of it.
Who are you?
My name is Ben Davis. I am the designer and programmer for these two modules. Let's see. So, thank you. We'll get things started with just like a kick drum. I had some patterns in here, but let me just go and clear them out just so it's not confusing. We'll just start from scratch. So you see here this flashing LED. This shows you the current preset that's pulled up. So you have 10 presets and 10 banks, so 100 presets total. So each preset is how each track is configured. And the tracks can be different lengths, divisions, and all that stuff. And I'll go into that in a second. So we're in channel 1, which is going out to a kick drum. And you see it's just going through the 16 steps. And what these sliders do is based on what's selected here. So like a standard step sequencer, you'll just dial in the steps with the slider. But instead of, let's see, we got audio there? Hang on. Okay. All right. So instead of just on and off, you have probability from 0 to 100%. So if it's all the way to the right, then it's going to hit every time. And then you can set any of these sliders, in between, and then, every, 50% or 20% it'll hit based on where the slider is. And as you're adjusting it, it'll show you the current value of that step. And after you're done adjusting it, it'll show you what the current step that's playing is on the bar graph. So if we go over to our next track, which is a snare, we'll just put something basic in there. So it's easy to just, kind of get things going. That's just probability. And then we also have repeats, delays, and pulse width for every step. So let me go over to, I believe this is our hi-hat. Let's see. Yeah, so we've got a hi-hat. So to show the repeats, what I like to do is, let's see, just get a simple hi-hat pattern going. And I'm also going to go into one of the more advanced things, which is the track, which gives you access to divisions, sequence length, and sequence mode for every track. So everything that's written under the slider is in effect when you're in track mode. So with the hi-hats, I like to divide them down. So divide by like 4. So you can divide any track up to 16 times or multiply it up to 16 times based on the master clock. And I'm going to set a sequence length of 4. And once I get back out of track mode, you'll see it's only going 4 steps and it's at 1/4 of the main clock. So now when I go to repeats, if on step 2 I want it to repeat 3 times, I just dial in 3. You can go all the way up to 16. So every step can have a different repeat rate. And that can be up to 16 steps. So if I want to make that, 6 steps, so you can make that as interesting as you want as far as the repeats per step. The delay you can also do per step, so that just gives you sort of a shuffle effect by delaying the trigger into each step. You also have pulse width per step, which in this case I'm just doing mostly drums, which are triggered. Actually, let me show it with the elements because it'll respond to gate width. Let's see. So let me go into this sequence. Let me just clear these other ones out real quick, and we'll do something here. So we get that going. So pulse width defaults to 50%, but just like with the other parameters, I just select pulse width, and then on each step I can go all the way up to 100% if I want to. And to tie steps together, you just make, you know, each step 100%. Let's see, and then it'll just be one long gate over these steps. Another thing you can do is there's this bank/all button. So if you want to apply the same setting to every step, you just hold this and adjust one slider, and then now it'll adjust that pulse width across all steps, which is handy for stuff like with the hi-hats where I wanted to set probability for every step. I just come in here, hit all on probability, and now it's set for, you know, every step. So those are all of the per step parameters. Let's see, and then let's get into the track before we go over to the notes. So for every track you can set, or for every channel, you can set different sequence lengths and divisions. So if on our kick track we want that to be 7 steps, we go here, and then now we're just dealing with 7 steps on our kick. And then our snare, if we want our snare to be 5, we go to track and we set that to 5, and now that's only going 5. And we have another thing here, so we want this to only be 8. And you can have, so every track can have its own length and division and everything. So you can also multiply up. So I was showing division earlier. This divide/multiply slider, if you hold track while adjusting that, it'll actually multiply the clock. So if I wanted to multiply that by 2, and I come back, now you see that's going twice the speed of the main clock. And you can use divisions and multiplications at the same time, so you could divide by 3 and multiply by 4 all on one track. Also the sequence mode, instead of just going forward, you can also go reverse, pendulum, and random. So if I go on our kick track here and adjust mode, so there's 4 modes. It starts with forward, then goes to reverse. If you see here, it's going in reverse. The third one is pendulum, so it'll just bounce back and forth. And then the last one is random, so it'll just randomly select any step. And so you can do all those modes on any track, as well as the lengths and divisions. So moving on to the notes, let me get something going here. Actually, I might have had something saved. So what's happening here is we've actually got random notes happening. So there's actually, every parameter can also, you can access a random basically range of that parameter. So like you can set notes to specific values, then if you hold probability and press note, then that allows you to set an upper range of what the minimum maximum note can be randomly, and that applies to repeats as well and everything else. So if I just clear this out real quick, let's see, let me just get something a little more basic going on here. We'll just turn on every note, and then so now I've got a 16-step note sequence. So there's 2 CV outputs that can be quantized or unquantized, and to set the scale, that's also in the track mode. And as you adjust the sliders that say key and root, it will show you, there's a keyboard here, and it'll show you which notes are active. So you just move a slider one way or the other to turn those notes off. So if you turn everything off, it becomes unquantized, and it's just 0 to 5 volts. So if we look here, and just bring it down to 1 step and just adjust this. So it's just fully unquantized. If I come back in and turn on just the root note, now we've got only octaves. And then you can enable as many notes as you want and create your own scale. So I'm just gonna do that. And we're gonna come back here and we're gonna make that a 4-step sequence. I know I've got our 4 notes here. So that's just a static sequence, but we can also randomize those notes. If you hold probability in note, now it'll start at the note we have programmed. It can go up to a higher note that we program in this mode. So like step 3 will always be random from the note we programmed before to the highest value. So you can do that with any step and then set a range of what the note on that step will be. So if on step 1 I set the main note all the way down and then randomly put that to about halfway. So now we've got random notes on 1 and 3, and then 2 and 4 are always the same. Always within that scale. So you can change the scale on the fly too. So you also have glide per step. So the way that works, let's see. Get that to it's also tempo sync. So all the way over will slide directly up to the next note. So if you have a really slow tempo, it'll always be tempo based. You can also randomize that. So if you hold probability and glide, now you can set a maximum glide time that'll always be random. Another cool feature with the randomization is the freeze, which we have a gate input for, but another way you can access that is just by holding recall. So anything that it's randomly done, it'll just lock onto. So while it's frozen, while this recall button is flashing, anything that was randomized on the last bar will stay static until you turn that back off. And you can enable that with an LFO through this gate input as well. And that'll work across the board. So if we create some, let's see, which brings me to the mute page. If you hold the mute button, you have direct access to all of the outputs to turn them on and off here. So it's an easy way to, bring things in and drop them out. And it always happens on the beat as to when it's brought in or dropped out. So then there's 3 basically mute pages. The first one is your main output mute. The second one will mute any randomization that's happening. So there's a random input here which will entirely randomize everything that's going on, and this will basically disable that from happening. The third page is a rotate. So what it will do is whatever is selected is where output 1 comes out. So if I press 3, it's going to shift 1 to output 3, and everything else wraps around to the right. Which is an interesting way to just like jam on stuff live. If you have all of the gates doing different things, you just shift something else into the kick pattern, and all your other patterns all over the place. See, transport button here to start and stop things, and then a tempo. So also we have the song mode, which I kind of went into the presets. So there's 10 presets in each bank, and you access the banks here. So if you're holding the bank button, you see we're in bank 1, you can set that to any of 1 through 10. So let's just go ahead and save this pattern we have here. And then let's save it also into the second pattern, and then we'll just modify it here a little bit. So let's see. So if we save that as 2, then what we can do in song mode is if we hold song and then press the patterns that we want to chain together, it'll automatically chain them together. And then whenever we press song, it'll actually activate that. So activate that and then hit play. And what it does, it'll wait till the last or the longest sequence plays before it goes into the next. So if you have a division of 2 or 3 on a certain channel, it'll wait till that one's done before it goes over. And you can chain these in any amount. So if you want the first preset to play 3 times, you just hold song, hit 1 3 times, and then 2. So it'll play that 3 times and then play 2 once, and then loop back around. With the song, you also have the mode of going forwards, reverse, pendulum, and random. So if you hold song and then adjust this sequence mode, it'll play these in any order. So you could, for example, go all the way up, which is random, and then just, I don't know what else is saved in here, but we'll go like 1 2 3 and see what happens here. So it'll just play the first 3 patterns randomly, and there's nothing in 3, so back to 1. But you can have 10 patterns set up and then randomly go through in a very specific order once you have them programmed. So we have the bank. We also have save and recall, so you can save and recall any preset, which is just done by hitting save and then the button 1 through 10 that you want to save to. So let's see. Any questions so far? So for the kick, it's just the peaks for the kick and snare. Then the hi-hats are the 808 hats. Then we've got the elements and braids. So let's see, I think that's it. Kimi's Taiko is doing a little FM thing. Let's see. Also, which leads me to the next thing, which is the live record mode. So let me just throw in like a hi-hat for reference, but you can actually play the gates in live, and it'll record everything that you did. So let's get this going here. And then to get into live record, on this new firmware, I updated it so it's easier to get into. If you just hold recall and hit probability, anytime the probability light is lit, any gate button you press will automatically record anything that was pressed. So next go around, we got, yep. And it'll quantize any of the input in this mode. So it's like an easy way to just kind of get things going. So you could just, get that going, save it, do something else, and then, kind of go back and forth between the two. And then to get back out of it, just also hold recall, hit probability, and now you're back in the normal mode. Let's see. What else do we have here? I guess that brings me to the voltage block. So the variegate is for all of your, drum sequencing, note sequencing, and then the voltage block gives you another 8 outputs of either modulation or note outputs. So this is also 0 to 5 volts. So 5 octaves for notes, or 5 volts for modulation. Let me clear this out real quick. Let's see, and we'll clear this out. Let me see what I got this going to here. Let's see. Let me actually unpatch this real quick just so I can kind of show you from the beginning. We'll get something going here with the elements real quick. Alright, and we're just gonna do some modulation on the elements. I'll show you how that works. So let's see. So if we want to control something, we'll patch up our first output first, and let's go into like the space CV, for example. And so now what happens is, as you adjust the slider, it will record the voltages to those steps. Just a little more. And you can also hold the step and adjust it for that step. So if we hold step 1, then this will be the value for step 1, and you can go through and do that, 1 step at a time. And then you have 8 outputs of that. So we move on here. So it'll pick up any live movements, and another way to record is if you're in shift mode, to record like an offset rather than a faster movement. Anything that you adjust in shift mode, so anytime this slider LED is lit, which you guys can see, anytime the slider LED is lit, it's recording to that step. So if I go into shift mode, move this a little bit, and then come back out, now I've just basically recorded an offset over all the steps. And then you can go and tweak this here. Let me get a few other things going on. So it's 16 steps, but just like the Varigate 8, you have the ability to divide and set different lengths, either globally or per track. So let me get a few other things going so we can really see what's happening here. So we have mute, just like the Varigate. You can mute any of the outputs. So now there's no CV going, or just 0 volts coming out of every output. You can bring just certain CVs in and out. You can also set the length. So currently we're set to 16 steps. We can bring it down to 3 steps. 8 steps. You also have the sequence modes from the Varigate, which are forward, reverse, pendulum, random. So if you go into shift, we're currently in forward mode. You can put it into reverse mode, and do pendulum, random. The really cool thing is the smoothing on here. So currently these are just jumping from one value to the next based on how they were recorded. If we go into the smooth mode, now we can set which steps are interpolated or smooth from one to the next. So if we smooth all of them, slow it down a bit. So you can have it either be steppy or smoothed with the modulation. Another thing you can do, instead of recording everything in, you can also just randomize the entire sequence. So if we do that, it'll just randomize every step. No, it doesn't. So I just cleared it out. So let's see, go back through here and we can say just smooth the first 8 steps. And then the last 8 are just more steppy. That's fine, yeah. Let's see. So, and now each channel can also be broken out into its own length and division. Let me see if I can find maybe a more obvious way to demonstrate this. Let's move over to the braids, and we'll just modulate, 2 parameters. Let's see. So, into our braids here, just have all steps on, and let's patch up the first and second outputs to that. So we've got the timbre on 1 and color on 2. Up. Go ahead and clear this out. Let's see what we got here. All right, so let's see what. Let me open this VCA up real quick. So now we're just recording steppy modulation, but if I go into smooth, so in the first 8 steps, you can hear that it's smooth everything out there, then it's still steppy on the last 8. But you can also, like I was saying, split everything out. So if you go into Shift and you select one of these top buttons, so by default, all 8 are lit, which means that all 8 are being controlled at the same time. If we just select 1, now our timbre, we can select a different length or division. So if we want that just to be 3 steps, when we come back to 2, we can set it to like 8 steps. And then you still have smoothing, which can apply separately to either one. Turn those off there. So let's see. The division is done here with this this knob. So as you adjust it, you can see that anywhere from 1 to 16 light up on the buttons. So you can divide anywhere from 1 through 16, and then the length as well can be from 1 through 16 per channel. So let's see. So like I was saying, you can just select a certain step. So okay, on step 1, if we want this sound, and on step 2. Let's see, let's tie them back together. So you can either, live record it or go to one step and adjust it to something different. So we also have scales in here, so we can do note sequencing. So if we select the scale, you have 16 scales to choose from, and each of the 8 outputs can be set to a different scale. In the manual, there's the list of all 16, but basically, when you're in scale mode, I want to adjust channel 3. We'll just adjust the slider, and then you select one of the 16 scales, so it'll select any of these here, and then these are all quantized. The first one is unquantized, and everything above that is quantized to a musical scale, and that's all listed in the manual. So now if we go and record something here, let's see. Turn off smoothing. So you can either just, play the slider live, or you can do each step. So step 1 is this pitch, and then these two, let's see, it's a little more drastic. So you have your 2 tonal parameters and then your pitch, and then step 2. So those are our 4 steps. So you can go through and do that each step, or just record it. So this is where divisions will be a little more obvious. So if I go into shift and just select the 3rd channel, now if I divide by 4, so the modulation is still happening at the regular rate, but the notes are only changing at a quarter division. So yeah, you can modulate any 8 parameters in your system with this, and it works directly with the variegate. So the clocking and the save and recall all work together. So over the bus board, there's a message that's sent whenever you do a save or recall. So you can basically tie this with 100 presets that are in the variegate. Standalone, it'll do 16 presets, so you have your save and recall buttons, and you would hit save and one of the 16 buttons, recall one of the 16. But pairing it with the variegate allows it to recall 100 presets along with the variegate. So you see, when I hit start here, it'll also reset the sequence on the voltage block, so everything is tied together. So if I'm at a different step and I hit start, it automatically puts me into step 1 and then links everything up. So also when I hit save, let's see if this is visible, but there'll be like an animation that goes across the voltage block when I hit save here. So you see when I hit save on the variegate, it's saved it on the voltage block as well. So you can tie these together as long as they're on the same bus board. You can tie as many voltage blocks to a variegate as you want. So you can extend 8 CVs at a time what you're doing with your variegate. So like a specific rhythm on the variegate and all of your modulation on the voltage block is all tied together, and that's one preset. And another preset can be entirely different configuration as far as your length, divisions, and all that stuff. Any questions at this point? Yeah.
How come you don't immediately have access to 100 presets?
Because there's just not the interface for it. Because we just have the save and recall buttons here, and it just makes sense as far as the 16 buttons on the bottom, as far as like an intuitive way to recall 100 presets. It just wasn't like immediately obvious, but we feel that most people will pair these together, and you just get the added benefit of the extra storage. Get asked why the voltage block didn't have 100 preset capability on its own, and so that was the answer.
Yeah, the syncing, that's just done over busboard. There's no like
Oh, right.
to connect internally. Or...
So the all that works over the CV gate rails on the busboard. So Dopefer created the CV gate sort of standard to where, say you had one of their MIDI interfaces and one of their oscillators or envelopes, you could plug in their MIDI interface and then it would send the pitch and the gate information to the bus board, and you'd pick that up on another module. But most modules just really weren't using that, so we ended up essentially doing MIDI communication over the CV rail and clocks over the gate rail, which 4MS and Make Noise have also picked up some parts of that standard. So the clock is being sent over the gate rail, and then the messages like the save, recall, and everything that locks it together is being sent over MIDI. So, yep.
Can you turn off the reset, the automatic reset between voltage block and the variegate?
So there's 3 modes, and I guess I'll go into that in a little bit with the CV mode as well. There's the clock, CV, and slave mode. So slave mode is exactly like the clock mode, except it does enable all those messages. So if you're just in clock mode, it'll still receive clock from the variegate, but not reset, save, recall, or any of the messages, yeah. Yep.
Just because you're using those 2 rails for signals, would you run into any issues with something like a tip-top audio mix because
right.
they do the bus mixing?
Yeah, which I think uses the gate rail. So you would need to put them on separate buses, or even some bus boards will have like a split sort of connector. So like one half, we actually ran into that when we were setting this case up, is that one half shared that rail and the other half didn't, and one module is just too far. So like you either connect that or put it on a different rail if you do want to separate it from other stuff. So yeah, let me go over the CV mode real quick. Let me just break this down so it's a little more visible. But so we've gone over the clocked modes so far, but the CV basically allows you to address the steps with CV as opposed to clocking through them one at a time. So let's see what we want to patch up here. All right, let me just get braids output. So we'll do kind of the same thing with the modulation. We'll just throw first and second one in here for timbre and color. And then the third one we'll do for pitch. And so now we have these other 2 knobs, which are offset and attenuate, which just apply to CV. So you can manually, okay, so there's clock mode. We'll go down into CV mode. You can manually select a step with the offset knob. So let me actually just go in here and just randomize. We'll just fill this in with some stuff. So you can just, play that live, or obviously throw in a CV. Here, we'll just use the ADLFO. And now we'll just plug this in. So you have external clock and reset. In CV mode, those become CV and hold. So CV will do the step addressing, and then hold will hold that step with an active gate. So let's see here. So you have your offset, and you can also attenuate how high that goes with the CV. So you could start it at step 5 or 4 and have it go up as many steps as you want, and it'll run pretty fast. So now I've got more of a triangle kind of thing going on. You can just randomize here. So there's also freeze, which I didn't go over yet. In shift mode, if you hold freeze, it'll just freeze all the outputs at that given time. So even if we have like smoothing enabled, let's see. So then we'll and you can also enable that just for certain channels. So if we hold freeze while we have this frozen, these 8 LEDs here show you which ones have that enabled. So if you just want to turn off the these first 2, so now our pitch is frozen, but the modulation continues to run. And you can change those on the fly. And so you can use pretty much any CV signal into here because you have the offset and attenuation. You can use something like an ADLFO, which is unipolar, 0 to 10 volts, and attenuate that down to what you need, or you can use a standard LFO that's bipolar, so you would like offset it to say like step 8 or about halfway, so then it can go backwards and forwards and hit all the steps. But yeah, you basically just have those 2 knobs there to get exactly the range you're looking for. I think that is pretty much everything that these can do, or at least, you know, the main features. Any extra question? Oh, yeah.
Does it have ADCs on board, so you could maybe in the future act as a voltage recorder for CV input?
Just for the CV part, that's the only analog input.
But I mean, does it have ADCs on the board so that you could perhaps in the future expand it to be a CV recorder to the steps?
There's really no header or anything on there, so yeah, as far as like future expansion, this is pretty much, you know, other than any like minor tweaks, we don't have anything really planned, you know, as far as expansion. So, yeah. Yep.
Are there any new firmwares that are going to be coming out that you know of that expand functionality?
So on the 8, there's a USB port on the back for updates. We should be releasing a new firmware update pretty soon, which has the only real main feature is the live record. Before you had to hold probability for 2 seconds to get into it. Now you can just hit recall and probability to jump in and out of live record. And just some other, you know, small tweaks and, you know, responsiveness of the sliders, you know, making that all better. But yeah, we post those up on our website. As far as the voltage block, there's no USB, it's not really user updatable, it is what it is. But the Variegate 8, you know, we update that every few months. Yeah.
How does it feel knowing you've made basically every other sequencer in the world obsolete?
Appreciate it, yeah. Anybody else?
What's the processor inside of it?
So these are based on an ARM Cortex M0. Cool. Well, appreciate everybody coming out tonight. Thanks.